Good morning and welcome. This is Business Morning. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago.
And I'm Ladi Williams. Thank you for joining us. Today is a public holiday in some countries like Nigeria and the UK to mark Labor Day. International Workers' Day, also known as Labor Day, is in most countries and often referred to as May Day. It's a celebration of laborers and the working class that is promoted by the international labor movement and occurs every year on the 1st of May, which incidentally fell on a Saturday this year. Here in Nigeria, it does not appear, it seems like there's nothing to celebrate apart from being alive. Workers and labor leaders across sectors of the economy lament their fortunes and fear of a gloomy future for the Nigerian worker, which they said calls for a sober reflection. That's
right, Ladi. The issue of minimum wage debate still lingering. There are a lot of unresolved industrial disputes, hike in prices of commodities such as petrol and electricity and so on, coupled with the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. In any case, in spite of all of these, we still have every reason to thank God for life. And so we say, Happy Workers' Day to all of us.
All of us, exactly, workers. Yes. And all the hardworking Nigerians out there.
Absolutely.
Well, in the meantime, whilst markets are on holiday today, particularly Nigeria and the UK, the global oil market is trading high as optimism about a strong rebound in fuel demand in developed countries and China in the second half of the year overshadowed growing concerns of a full lockdown in India to curb the COVID-19 pandemic. Brent crude futures for July gained 36 cents to $67.12 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures for June was at $63.94 a barrel, up 36 cents. Vaccinations are expected to lift global oil demand, especially during a peak travel season in the third quarter, prompting analysts to increase their forecasts for Brent prices for a fifth straight month. On supplies, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries pumped 25.17 million barrels per day in April, up 100,000 barrels from March, as Iran and other producers increased output. OPEC's production has risen every month since June 2020, with the exception of February. Iran and the United States are in talks to revive a nuclear deal, which could lead to a lifting of U.S. sanctions that would allow Iran to ramp up oil exports.
And back here, Access Bank PLC held its annual general meeting on Friday, where it announced the approval and payment of a final dividend of 55 kobo per 50 kobo ordinary share for its shareholders for the year ended December the 31st, 2020. The managing director and chief executive officer of the bank, Herbert Wigwe, also revealed plans by the board to ensure deeper penetration of the bank across the African continent. Let's watch this.
One after the other, they come in for the 32nd annual general meeting of Nigeria's biggest lender by asset, Access Bank PLC. The meeting is a hybrid one in line with the COVID-19 protocols.
I now declare the meeting open.
Without further ado, the business of the day commences. Shareholders, board of directors, regulators all take turns to announce their presence.
We now move to the formal business of this meeting.
On the agenda for discussion at the meeting include dissecting earnings for the 2020 financial year, full approval of final dividends for shareholders, election and re-election of non-executive directors, amongst others.
I hereby move that a final dividend of 55 kobo per ordinary share of 50 kobo each be sanctioned, and that the directors be and are hereby authorized to pay same from the profit during the financial year ended December 31st, 2020.
The board chairman announces the final dividend and puts it before the shareholders for a vote. Unanimously, they agree to the 55 kobo final dividend.
I keep referring to the past because it's important now.
Addressing concerns raised by some shareholders, the bank's managing director, Herbert Wigwe, assures shareholders that the expansion drive will be beneficial to all.
There is no bank that was our size in 2002 that exists even in name today. All right? Now, here we are by God's blessings as the leading bank in this country. So now we can be a bit more generous in terms of what we pay out to our shareholders. So everything is about timing, about making sure that you have the appropriate capital to support your growth.
The voting has now closed.
The meeting offers an opportunity for the election and re-election of some directors. The air of optimism is present among the shareholders who believe the decisions of the board are in the best interest of the bank.
The most important thing is that in Access Bank is owner's manager. So definitely they know what is right decision because they have huge investment in the bank. And that has actually helped in whatever decision that they've taken and whatever decision they intend to take.
The Tier 1 lender has continued to intensify its cross-border expansion in order to take advantage of opportunities on the African continent, a move that is welcomed by its shareholders.
Well, the alarming state of insecurity in Nigeria is not just threatening the growth of the country, but may plunge the country into famine if not checked. The worsening insecurity situation has triggered inflationary pressure on food prices and worsening the poverty conditions in the country. Currently, food inflation is at 22% and will likely go higher. Is there a way out of this situation? Let's have this conversation with the Chief Executive Officer, Best Food Global Limited, Mr. Emmanuel Ijewere. Thank you very much, Mr. Ijewere, for joining us on the program. Good morning and happy Workers' Day to you.
Happy Workers' Day to you, my dear brother sister. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Well, we're celebrating Workers' Day, and of course, everybody in different sectors, including the agri sector where you are also workers. Now, how worried are you about the insecurity situation in Nigeria and the impact on the agri sector where you operate?
Very worried indeed. Very worried, particularly because Nigeria had food security problems before COVID. Nigeria had food security problems before this heightened level of insecurity in the country. And Nigeria also had food security problems before the situation in the Sahel worsened in terms of their own insecurity, as well as the low rainfall they suffered last year. So the situation is this, that this is the planting season. The next 3 months are so crucial to Nigeria if we are not going to have a huge shortage of food in the country, because this is the planting season when we should be preparing for harvesting in late August, September, and November. It has also been further complicated by the level of export of Nigerian food, especially in northern area of the country, to other parts of of Africa, because they have a lot of challenges, and our exchange rate has encouraged a number of our own farmers and aggregators to be encouraged to export food out there. Now, what is also happening is the worrisome situation that's further developing in eastern part of the country. We have gotten used to the northeast of the country over this period, and they are beginning to come back. So the price of beans came down slightly, but the price of maize, which is required for many other things, including the poultry industry, is rising on daily basis. Soya is difficult to get because of the instability and insecurity. Farmers are afraid to go to the farms. And I'm worried about this. Unless something is done within the next 2 to 3 months, we will have very, very, very dire consequences.
All right, Mr. Ijewere, the growth rates of the agri sector in the fourth quarter of 2020 was about 2.58%, while the economy as a whole only managed to a marginal growth rate of about 0.11%. Could you explain how it's possible to achieve this level of growth in the agri sector, in the midst of insecurity, especially in the food production basket of the Middle Belt, coupled with the pandemic?
I will be granular in explaining that. For example, today is Workers' Day. We are on holidays, but we farmers have no holiday today, so we work 24/7. Now, especially in that season, the other reason is the fact that farmers, in their own small ways, are small capitalists who must go to work, who must work hard to ensure that they feed their families. Because many of our farmers are small people, but aggregating all of them, you will see the growth they are having. So against all odds, they keep on working. That's the reason why we have this growth. But however, they also have challenges because the 2.6% is not something that was projected about 10 years ago. We should be having about 6 or 7% growth in the agricultural space. But we have not been able to because all the inputs are supposed to go in. For example, let's take tomato. Only 1.5% of farmers today use improved seedling. Whereas if they had used improved seedling, their yield will go up at least 5-fold. There are so many things that need to be done. While we know that government after government keeps saying that agriculture is the way to go, but nothing is actually happening there. Nobody is really listening to it. So I think that the sooner we start looking at agriculture and seeing agricultural produce as national wealth, rather than just seeing oil as the only national wealth, it will continue to face this kind of situation. So the reason, the 2.6 you mentioned, for you may look good compared to the Nigerian global growth rate or GDP. But for us in the agricultural sector who are to some extent enlightened, are very unhappy about the level we are as of today, given the kind of God-sent opportunities we have in terms of the arable land we have, space, water, all those things, and weather. And we have good, hard-working farmers. These have not been able to be translated because the partnership with government has not really worked.
Now, you sounded a note of warning that if nothing is done about the insecurity situation in the country in the next 3 months, that we'll probably not have enough food in the country. Now, Nigeria claims to have a strategic grain reserve. What is the total level of storage, and is it enough to last, for the next year or two?
You will recall that last year during the COVID, the president announced that they were going to release, I think, 300,000 tons.
300,000, yes, of maize.
Yes, 30 tons of maize. That has been released. It's not like now you have released it, you now have to go back and start planting. So the strategic reserve, as far as maize is concerned, for example, is grossly depleted as of today. On top of that is the fact that we need to have reserves in a number of foodstuffs. I was very impressed last week when Lagos state government came up with a roadmap because Lagos is the biggest consumer, and I think they are reacting very well. I'm very happy that at least states like Lagos are doing something about it, but they have a challenge. They don't have the land to do it. So they now have to partner with other states to be able to do it. Then you now have the challenge of preservation. How many warehouses do we have? We now have commodity exchanges. Commodity exchanges cannot really boom unless you have warehouses and so on. So we have challenges about storage. What we managed to have at that time is all gone. So we do not have any strategic reserve as of today. That is the situation we are facing today. And strategic reserves are better maintained by the private sector who will run it, and government will ensure that they aggregate this for the security of the country.
All right, some analysts say approximately 40% of food commodities in Nigeria are destroyed because of poor storage and the distance between the growing belt and the high manufacturing hub. A survey also shows that investors are wary of investing in the raw material belt because of insecurity and crumbling road infrastructure. What do you suggest as a way out of this investment conundrum?
I would say to first start with, for the 40% that is estimated as the food wastage is understated. I would categorically say certainly above 40%, but somewhere around 50-52% of all the food that God has given us are destroyed by our own carelessness as human beings. So I'll put that there. Now, what do we need to do? Like I said, there has to be many of our farmers who are the primary producers don't have that level of education, don't have access to funding and so on and so forth. More enlightened people need to come in. And we are looking at situations where people can come in the value chain. The banks need to be convinced. And what has happened is that the central bank has been doing all it can to handhold commercial banks to come into agriculture. But they are still very reluctant. They want to be given and well spoon-fed for them to even look at agriculture. So in other words, unless these superstructures like banks, who are the financial institutions, start taking agriculture as the future of this country, we will never make progress. These are the issues. You see, we talk about the strategic reserve. You plant, you have all this, the farmers harvest all this, they never end up on your table for consumption. They get lost either in the farm because there's no transportation, or in the local market in the village because there's no preservation, or on the roads because the roads are so bad, or because there's no warehouse. Even in every market you have wastages. These are issues that need to be addressed in a holistic manner. So let's take the Ministry of Agriculture, for example. What seriousness do we have in the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, where we have one minister or two ministers, both of them there? Whereas in actual fact, if agriculture is so important to us, we should have one for animal husbandry, we should have one for grains, we should have one for fishery. It's so important. The future of Nigeria is dependent on agriculture, not on oil. We keep telling ourselves this, but we still go to the one ear and comes out of the other. It's a very sad situation.
Sad situation indeed. So how much linkages do we have between agriculture and industry?
Right now, our industry cannot really grow because they cannot continue to import their raw materials. The foreign exchange is not there, and some of them are built on the basis of local production. And our local production is not doing well because you need to process what you are selling. Even our exports, as of today, what Nigeria is the biggest producer of cassava in the world. We produce about 40% of the world's cassava. Our export of cassava product is zero. Indonesia, that produces only about, I think, 11 or 12% of all cassava, 80% of the world cassava export is from there. We are unable to add value to our cassava because we don't have the industries. You go to any bank and sit down with them and say, look, I have this project and it's coming from this country and that. The next thing they will ask you is, where is your collateral? And your collateral must be from Ikoyi, Victoria Island, Maitama, or places like that. Those are things that we have not been able to bring together. We've held conferences and conferences. Nigeria is now suffering from over-conferencing. So we know what the problems are. It's a question of the decision of various governments. I was happy that Lagos State made the move they made, coming with a roadmap, bringing the private sector together and say, what is your problem? Tell us what your problems are. Let us see how we can play a role to mitigate it. So every state government, because agriculture is in local governments and states, they are not in the Independence Square in Abuja. They are in the villages. So let the state governments and the local governments, well, of course, in many states, local governments are just on paper. So these are issues that need to be discussed. Go to a local government and ask them, how many of your farmers produce yam? Many of them don't even know any of their farmers. So we need to go back to the grassroots. For us to be successful in agriculture, we need to be granular as a nation.
All right, so there's a wide gap between the productivity of many commodities and crops, animals, milk, etc. In Nigeria and the developed nations, how can Nigeria bridge this gap? And what else can be done towards this all-important goal?
The first thing is that we recognize the fact that we have hard-working farmers. Next is for the various governments at various levels to sit down with them as partners of economic progress, to say, what are your problems? How do we work together? As long as you don't do that, everybody is working in a silo. And those silos are so many that become an obstruction to each other. So what we need to do, they bring in a lot of more educated people into it. And those who hold the reins of economic power in Nigeria, like the financial power, need to come in to assist. They don't have to be farmers, but they can invest in allowing more production, either semi-processing or full processing of these. When we export any of our produce, we are only getting less than 10% of the value. Those countries that process them get about 80% or 90% of the value. These are the issues that we need to, first of all, understand. Okay. We need to believe in ourselves, believe in our future, believe in agriculture, knowing that that's the way forward.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ijawere, for sharing your thoughts with us. This Workers' Day, we do appreciate your time. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the day. And try to rest and keep safe.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll take a break, and when we come back, of course, we'll revisit the issue of the Workers' Day, looking at labor productivity and, of course, the economy. Just stay with us. All right, back to the issues of the Workers' Day. In most nations, especially produced wealth economies, there is a positive correlation between labor productivity and real economic growth. However, in natural wealth economies, especially resource-rich countries, including oil-rich countries, it is possible to have positive GDP and negative labor productivity. And so, while we celebrate workers, it's important to look at issues of labor productivity as a driver of economic growth. And to have this conversation with us is the Executive Director, Africa Youth Growth Foundation, Dr. Arome Salifu. Thank you very much, Dr. Salifu, for joining us on the program. Good morning and happy Workers' Day to you.
Yeah, good morning. Happy Workers' Day.
So as we celebrate Nigerian workers, including you and I today, it's important to understand the nexus between these two economic variables, productivity and growth. Now, when you look at empirical data published by the MBS and the EIU, you'll find out that the average GDP growth in the last 5 years since 2016 is about 0.30%. In the same period, labor productivity growth was minus 1.28%. This means that Nigeria has been able to eke out an average growth in GDP in 5 years, in which it suffered 2 recessions, whilst its labor productivity growth was minus 1.28%. Now, this means that the economy and productivity are moving in opposite directions. Can you explain the reason for this aberrational movement, or can it be said to be a validation of the mineral resource curse theory that oil wealth makes countries and their citizens lazy and unproductive?
Yeah, thank you so much. First and foremost, happy Workers' Day, Nigerians. Of course, today is equally the International Press Freedom Day.
Absolutely.
Of course, your question is quite strategic at this point in time. Nigeria is being faced with a lot of challenges, including the challenge of economic stagnation and, of course, poor productivity on the part of its workforce. But first and foremost, we have to realize the fact that everything, rises and falls on the basis of the governance architecture that is in place. The economy, the productivity of the workforce is oftentimes predicated on the quality of leadership, being provided at that point in time. What is happening today is not just, beginning just now. It's something that has been building up, over the last couple of, years. And we are just beginning to see some of the highlights of the consequences of the leadership failure in the past couple of years. Looking introspectively, you realize that the economy of Nigeria has been dominated by oil, and that, of course, has made almost every other sector to suffer unduly in terms of negligence and neglect on the part of our policymakers, our leadership, and all of that. In other places, in other climes, the fact that the country is blessed, with oil, don't necessarily result to negative productivity or, in any case, bad, economic situations. You have countries like Dubai, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, that are making very good use of their oil resource. And of course, they have been able to transform their countries to what, what they are today. The story is not the same for Nigeria. purely because of leadership and the quality of leadership. We must realize that for us as a country, we must visit our leadership recruitment process, that we must take our time to select and elect people that have the character, the competence, and the capacity to lead, to envision and to see into the future and plan accordingly for the future. Our failure to plan many years back has brought us to where we are today. If you look at the current global trajectory, the global trend, no country is an island. We all have to depend on one another. Because of the fact that Nigeria failed to plan in the last 3 decades or so, you now see Nigerians living, this country in their numbers, looking for other environments where they could have fulfilled, life and destiny. And that is emptying the country. Our best brains are leaving, and that relatively contributes to a certain level of poor productivity. And again, some of the contributory factors, including the fact that we have poor infrastructure to support our productivity. We have situation that almost absolute poor power supply, for our industries to function and for our small scale, manufacturers to be able to manufacture. So that, again, is a major factor to look at if we must consider productivity as a major contributory factor to our economic growth. So the growth we've had over the years have been contributed majorly by oil sector. And the agricultural sector that have been supportive of the oil and gas sector have suffered untold negligence or more or less difficulty because of challenge of insecurity. Farmers have not been able to go to their farms, and it's even leading to food insecurity. Apart from the fiscal insecurity we have, is leading to food insecurity already, and of course gradually is going to lead to social insecurity and all manner of insecurities that you can imagine in the country. So we need to put our acts together. It's not too late as a country that we must get it right. We must think ahead. We must envision the future and strategically position the country to succeed and to be competitive amongst a global community of nations. We cannot afford to be reactive all through. We cannot. We've got to plan, sit down, get our best hands, get our best brains to plan for this country. We have all it takes to make it. We have all it takes to succeed. We have all it takes to move Nigerians out of poverty. If you look at the key indicators we have right now, we have highest level of unemployed population, not just in Africa, almost in the world right now. We equally have the world poverty capital, and we equally have the third poorest governed country, in the world, based on the latest governance index release. And so all of these are pointing to the negative. And that, again, is a clear warning to us that, indeed, it's no longer business as usual. We've got to go back to the basics, including even our governance system, our leadership recruitment process, to guarantee that, indeed, Nigerians have a future that is guaranteed, a future that is certain, a future they can look up to, and that they can raise their children in without fear, without discrimination, without harassment. So these are some of the realities that I feel, if we don't address, we'll certainly have very difficult,
Mr. Salifu. Mr. Salifu,
yes,
so you talked about the unemployment figures, which is currently at 33.3%. But do you think the unemployment level in Nigeria is also responsible for the low level of productivity?
Yes, of course, if you don't have somebody doing something, you cannot certainly talk about productivity. Once you're idle, you cannot talk of productivity, and you've seen the youth unemployment statistics is 42.5%. That is alarming. If you look at the millions that we are talking of, that is more or less more than population of some countries, and you are having such number unemployed. I mean, how can you relate that, to issue of productivity? Because, I mean, once you are not employed, definitely you are unproductive. You are not contributing anything to the economy. You are not contributing anything to the system. In fact, the reverse is actually the case. That is, you are actually escalating the challenges that already exist in the system. That is talking about the insecurity we have, and that's why Boko Haram, for example, bandits have that free access to our young people to recruit them at will and to convert them for whatever purpose they want them to serve. And that is the challenge we have, that even the current war we are fighting against insurgents and against bandits, until you're able to address the challenge of unemployment, youth poverty, youth underemployment, you have not addressed the real challenge of insecurity in Nigeria. And these are some of the facts and realities that we have to contend with. You cannot, in any case, talk about productivity without creating employment for the mass youth population that are currently unemployed. And come to think of it, this build-up didn't start just yesterday, like I said earlier. Over the years, we've neglected the critical component of our development. You talk about education. You talk about health system. You talk about power and infrastructure. You talk about agriculture. You talk about even issues of our election and electoral reform. These are fundamentals that we must visit if we must get this right. And again, our population growth is even at staggering rate as we speak. So these issues are compounded and so complex that you cannot just even look at how best to address it from one angle. You've got to put so many thoughts together, so many perspectives together to be able to sustainably address these issues. We've got to look at the issue of our population growth. Some persons will feel population growth is not a challenge. Population growth is not a challenge when you have proportionate educational, development, prioritization, to make sure that your population is developed well enough to sustain, your production, to sustain your manufacturing, to sustain your service sector, to sustain every other productive activities you engage in as a country. Until we have such population that is of high quality to compete, in the labor force, in the labor market with the rest of the world, we have not started. Why am I saying this? Because we now live in a global community. We have a lot of Nigerians living, and we equally have a lot of Nigerians who could come in. If you want to build a bridge today, you will not say that because somebody is a Nigerian, you have to give it to that person. Of course, we have local content laws and all of that. But in reality, you've got to look at the capacity of that person to deliver that job. So we have to build our local capacity through education to support our production, to support our manufacturing. And that is the reason why a lot of stuff are being imported into the country.
All right.
You look at the fact that almost everything we consume in our households are imported. That is not sustainable. A population, a country that has over 200 million.
Yeah, Dr. Salifu, we really don't have
as a population, and yet you don't have.
Well, Dr. Salifu, we really don't have much time. Yes, I agree with you. We do have the population that should be sort of advantage for us, but perhaps we're not making proper use of it. Anyway, before we let you go, now as we celebrate workers in the midst of a pandemic, and as we deal with all of these crises, and of course, the crisis of pandemic and the crisis of insecurity, and then look to the future, there is need for a recovery that is sustainable and inclusive of all, and that means making deliberate and coherent policy choices. So what policies are needed to improve workers' welfare, both in the public and private sector, in order to ensure a productive economy? A quick one, please.
Okay, thank you. First and foremost, I would like to start with the public sector. The minimum wage as passed by National Assembly and signed by Mr. President must be domesticated, localized by all the states. because you have a system. We have the federal system and we have the state system in terms of salaries and all of that. We've got to ensure that the states are able to pay salaries as contained in the Minimum Wage Act. The second is that workers, the capacity of workers should be built appropriately to be able to meet up with the current realities and current, workforce workplace, challenges. We have many states and many federal agencies that even in the last 5 years, they have not trained their staff. They have not taken them on any form of training. That is not sufficient. That is not good enough. We should be able to train and build a capacity of our workers to be able to meet up with the expectations of their mandate. Then thirdly, that you should be able to take their welfare seriously. If somebody retires today, his packages, his entitlements should be paid as at when due. And you equally have the issue of even retirement plan, that, some cases where you have pensioners queuing, all the way before they have access to, to their funds. That shouldn't be the case. We should have a better functional system. These are the ways you can guarantee better productivity for workers. On the side of the private sector are even doing better in so many cases because it's a very competitive sector. It's a free system where labor mobility is very high. And so the private sector, for me, is something that they're already working on how best to enhance, their labor force, welfare system, and all of that. And we equally have to look at the fact that they are merely complementary to whatever the government is doing, and they ride on what the government is already doing. So government needs to take the lead by making sure they provide the necessary enabling environment to guarantee productivity of workers in Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Ajore, there's a prevalence of insecurity and insurgency across most regions of the country. What can be done to achieve a broad solution to this almost intractable problem?
Yes, this is my advice. Just last 3 weeks, I was in Jibia border in Katsina State. And we went on inspection with some of the officers, to inspect Jibia border on one of the projects we currently implement with the IOM. And we discovered that currently some of these borders are having serious challenge of high level of insecurity in these borders. People are actually exploiting the window of total ban on movement of goods on our borders to now create new pathways to irregularly move goods, commodities in between the countries. A case at hand, practically speaking, was the fact that between Nigeria and Niger Republic, Jibia border, a lot of vehicles are moving using the irregular crossing routes without any, resistance whatsoever. Now, when you have that kind of situation, regardless of what you do within, you cannot fight the issue of insecurity sustainably because movement of arms are happening on regular basis in and out of the country. So there's need to think of building walls around Nigeria. Now, this may look laughable, but this would help provide jobs.
I'm already laughing.
Unemployed population, a youth population. Yes, and at the same time, contribute to guaranteeing our national security. Building walls around Nigeria could be the next line of thought if we must fight this insurgency with every sense of responsibility and every sense of seriousness.
Okay. I wonder how that is going to work out anyway, but however, we'll see how that goes. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on this, Dr. Salifu. Do enjoy the rest of the day and happy Workers' Day again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll look at the crypto market, the market that never sleeps. This is Business Morning. While other markets, the equities, the fixed income are on holiday, the crypto market never sleeps. And Ladi is here to tell us what
Yeah,
the weekend was like for this market. Ladi, market all in green
Yep, it's
this
all in
morning.
green, yeah.
Ethereum is another high,
Keeps
and of course
smashing
Bitcoin
highs.
doing great again
Yes,
this morning. It looks
yes.
like the week is going to be a great one.
Exactly, indeed, a market that never sleeps. Let's look at the market cap, $2.27 trillion now, up about 2.93%. 24-hour volume for the total crypto space, $123.6 billion traded, down about 8% this morning. Bitcoin dominance, 47.66, down 0.48%. Let's look at price of Bitcoin at 8 a.m., 57,969, up about 1.75%. 24-hour volume for Bitcoin traded in early trade this morning, $39.403 billion. With Ethereum smashing new highs, hit about $3,100, up 5.93% this morning. Let's talk to Olumide Adesina now. Hello, Olumide.
Hello, Daddy. Happy holiday.
Happy Workers' Day. Maybe we should have a crypto trader day at some point, right?
Yeah, I think we should.
All right, so Ethereum just keeps smashing new highs. They hit about $3,100. You know, with this, what trend do you think we should expect from this?
Yeah, I think what's really happening in the crypto market is that institutional investors are now looking more at the value crypto assets. And, you know, Ethereum has this value real case scenario where you can use the crypto asset for so many functionality. And another key thing that is helping Ethereum is that at the futures market in Canada, we have 3 ETF funds currently in play, and that's attracting record high institutional investment. That will really push Ethereum to another record high, because right now it's broken the $3,000 resistance level and is presently hovering around 3,100. So market technicians are looking at the 3,215 mark. If that breaks above that, then it's just a matter of weeks before it gets to 3,500. But the concern is that, you know, Bitcoin dominance is at record low. That tells you that generally with the pioneer crypto asset is suffering from institutional drawdowns. Institutional investors are now looking at other assets. And you can see that even in the gold market, gold is also moving to record as getting close to $1,800. So amid the fact that we're in the bullish run, institutional investors are becoming more picky. And that's why you see Bitcoin dominance dropping to record low. But I think Ethereum, in real case scenario, just like what you said, I think it's going to gain more relevance. You see the rise of NFTs, the rise of more smart contract applications. So my bias is that, Ethereum could really break on, but I expect some pullbacks in the near future, because that price seems to be a bit high. If you look at the fact that it has risen more than 280% in just 4 months.
Massive
I think that's
rise,
too fast.
yeah.
Yeah, very fast. And the fact that if you look at year to date, it's also rising beyond 1,300%. That tells you that I think the bulls will get tired at one point.
At some point. Well, what about the issues with Ethereum fees being high? How's that looking right now?
Yeah, I think the ongoing upgrade, will solve that. Though it will take a while, and the fact that other smart cryptos are already doing similar things. I'm talking of Binance, and I'm talking of Solana. I think those things will prove to be a challenge for Ethereum in the near future. But the key thing about Ethereum is that it has so many functionality, and it leads the pace when it comes to that area. So I don't see that distorting the present macros, but it could be a threat in future, yeah.
All right, talking about institutional investors, I remember a few years ago, Warren Buffett called Bitcoin rat poison. What's the bias right now?
His bias hasn't changed. He's recently, when he was talking to his shareholders, I'm talking about Berkshire, one of the leading companies in the world, and that has one of the strongest market value in terms of the assets they hold. You know, his countenance towards crypto assets didn't change, and you know, market pundits expected that he would talk more, but he was more of the fact that an asset that you don't really have intrinsic value, that doesn't really have intrinsic value, it becomes something very difficult to predict. But I think you should understand that Warren Buffett is in his 90s and he's more of a conservative investor when you look at his metrics of choosing assets. So
Right.
that didn't really move the market. So we saw that, in fact, there was a big sell-off. Bitcoin dropped as low as 56,000, but after some hours later, it sprang up, telling you that investors are discounting Warren Buffett's bias. But I think you can't ignore Warren Buffett's statement in the finance world,
Exactly.
meaning that
With his wealth of
Bitcoin,
experience.
I find it very difficult continue breaking such record highs in the future, because institutional investors are pulling back based on volumes. If you look at the from January to March, it's stalling now. March, April, the number of cash flows coming to Bitcoin market is stalling, telling you that investors are not as grippy on the asset.
Okay, so what's the outlook for the week for the price of Bitcoin and altcoin buyers?
Okay, I expect Bitcoin on week-to-week case scenario to stay above $55,000 based on the fact that the dollar is still on is muted, meaning that the dollar is not as strong as it should. But present statements from the Fed might push the crypto market direction, because they were expecting some statements from that angle. Then for altcoins, I think Ethereum should be able to keep on the momentum, at least in the near stay around between $2,750 to $3,000. At least that's the support level. Then I think if the bulls keep on riding, it might break above 3,250. For all our altcoins that are also riding on Ethereum surge, the momentum will still be the same.
Okay. All right, Lumide, thank you so much. Enjoy your workers' holiday.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, let's see now. Top alts by market cap. BNB still smashing highs there at $633, up about 3.32%. Cardano is still trying there, up about 1.19%. DOT is the biggest mover with the top alts by market cap, up about 3.69%. And XRP, $1.61, up about 1.40%. Coin to watch, Digibyte. I'm looking at this one. Market cap about $3.31 billion, 15 cents. In the last run, it got as high as 12 cents. And in sats, in Bitcoin sats, Digibyte got to about 800 sats. So now it's sitting at about 200. So I'm thinking if it wants to break the Bitcoin all-time high, that will take it to about 45 cents. So I'm watching Digibyte. I might see some profits in there. Looking at the charts now, we see it's still in bullish territory on the one-day chart. The MACD cross still up there in the bullish territory. Then we have the KDJ. The KDJ is up here, looking still bullish today. So we have at 8 a.m. this morning, it was about 15 cents 9. So Digibyte is one to watch at this point. Top 5 gainers, XVS up about 25%. MKR, $5,532, up about 19%. Matic, Polygon, 86 cents. 86 cents. Polygon is doing incredibly well this time. It was down to about 40 cents earlier. Now that's about 100% profit. If you bought that dip, it's up 12% this morning. Waves, $24, up about 11%. Ontology, we should be looking at Ontology gas, because once Ontology starts to move, you can expect the gas. Phantom, massive run there with a pullback of about 5% this morning. I have Nano at $10, down about 4%. VGX, $4.38, down about 1.34. So you see, when your top losers only have 1 digit, you know that the alt coins are still doing well at that point.
So we can say, are we in alt season? I mean, Olumide talked about Bitcoin dominance going low. So are we likely to see the altcoins maybe shining this week?
If it's not alt season, I don't understand. Some of these altcoins have done about 2,000% year-to-date performance. So if that's not alt season, I don't know what it is then.
And then you talked about the Digibyte.
Digibyte, yes.
Yes, and that's
one of the OGs from about 2013. You know, so when you look at the OGs like Ethereum also, you know, smashing new highs, I would expect a coin like Digibyte to do something like that at some point.
Should that be your coin pick for the week?
To watch.
All right, we'll keep watching, but it's not a financial advice anyway. And if you must play in this market, please seek professional advice, as we always say.
Don't get your advice from Twitter.
All right, that's it on the program for today. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago, and happy holiday.
And I'm Ladi Williams. Thank you for watching. Happy Workers' Day.